Welcome back to the Jeremiah Show. My special guest today is John Beasley. He's a pianist, composer, arranger, and producer. His new album is Returning to Forever. We're playing that throughout the interview today. He recorded it with the Frankfurt Radio Big Band. It's the music of Chic Corea's Return to Forever, reimagined, honoring the legacy of Chic Corea. Recorded by Grammy-nominated Frankfurt Radio Big Band and Multi-GRAMMY winner John Beasley. Welcome back, John.
Hey, Jeremiah.
So we went to break and we were talking about the reimagining of Returning to Forever, and we'll pick up there. Talk to me about why you took on this project. It's a big project, turned out beautifully. And how it got there.
Well, as I said before, I was in Frankfurt working with the big band and having dinner, and we kind of came to the conclusion that our next project together would be the music of Return to Forever with the big band, and it made sense because if you listen to the electric version, particularly of Return to Forever, it's all has these long forms. They're almost like suites. They start a certain way, then they go in, and there's lots of passages, busy passages where they play together, this kind of stuff. So it seemed like it would really work well to orchestrate it for a big band.
And you thought of Frankfurt Radio Big Band. You've worked with them in the past.
I was working with them at the time, and I pitched the project to them, and they loved the idea, so they commissioned me to arrange the music, to bring it back to Frankfurt, and to do a series of concerts with them. And this was 2019, so we had arranged to have concerts in fall of 2020. And of course, we all know what happened then, right?
Mm-hmm.
COVID came. So I got a call. I had already started writing one or two, and I got a call saying, oh, we're going to have to cancel this and rebook after all this is over. So I asked them if I could still keep writing and keep, the commission money, because I didn't have, they were very kind to give me the money all in advance, so that I had something to live on in 2020, right? Nothing's happening. So they said yes. And then, so I arranged 4. I had demos of 4. Actually, I should back up. So after I knew that I was going to have this commission, I called Chic to check in with him and to make sure he would be okay with me doing something like this with his music. And he said, of course, being the real supportive guy he was. And we started talking more, and he told me during that conversation, John, I've always considered myself a composer first and then a pianist. So we talked about all the composing he's doing, which led me to ask him, hey, Chic, do you have any of these lead sheets, any of these arrangements laying around? Be very helpful if I could, check them out. He said, yeah, man, I'll send them to you. So he sent me a big email with PDFs of all this handwritten manuscript from 1973 on, in his handwriting. And I went, oh man, this is so incredible. And it's actually what you see on the first page of this cover. That's Chic's manuscript writing. And so and he said, well, when you get through with a few of them, send them to me. I'd like to hear the demos, Sibelius demos. And so I started writing, and I had 3 or 4, I had 4 of them, and I thought to myself, oh, it's time to send some to Chic, see what he says. And I waited a day or 2 or 3, and he had passed in that amount of time. He had passed away, so he didn't get to hear any of this, unfortunately.
That's too bad.
Yeah. So we go back to Frankfurt. Um, must have been in 2021. I believe it was winter of 2021. And or actually it might have been 2022. I'd have to look it up. Do you know, Lorna? Yeah. I'm not sure the exact date, but we end up going back and we rehearse for about 3 days, maybe four, because it's hard music, and do one gig. And that gig is actually up on YouTube. They film everything, they mix everything. It's pretty incredible. And you were being tested. We're wearing masks unless we're playing. And by the second day, for the second concert, one of the trombone players comes down with COVID, and it shuts down the whole concert 15 minutes before the concert. This must have been 2021, actually. So, you know, it the concert hall was full of people. We were all dejected, disappointed. And at that point, the leader of the orchestra, Olaf, says, "You know what? You're going to come back and we're going to record this and make a record." So about a year later, we went to did the same thing, rehearsed for a few days, recorded, and then did some of the makeup gigs. And that's what you're hearing in this record today.
It's an amazing, amazing album. Really, really beautiful. We're playing it throughout the show again today. There's 7 tracks, right, on the album,
Yeah.
which gave us the perfect opportunity to play 7 tracks during this show. So, what an incredible story! It's and tragic too. The chick didn't get to hear it, but what a gift he gave you. Throughout your career, it sounds like the gift of his presence and his music. Did the going back to the pandemic, did the existence of the pandemic and living during a pandemic and that isolation and not knowing, I mean, remember we had no idea is this going to end and how it's going to end, right?
Yeah.
So all those things, did they contribute at all to your imagination or your reimagination of RTF?
Sure, I had lots of time. And actually I was on a creative role, if you will, writing. I I I did a whole project with the SWR band called Bird Lives, where we reimagined Charlie Parker's music with the big band and strings. So I wrote that whole project that year. I wrote this project that year, and I wrote um, had a commission with the New York with the Carnegie Hall Youth Orchestra, big band, and so I was able to write. I was lucky that I wasn't just depending on being a pianist at that time, because there were really no gigs, literally. Um, and so I wrote, and so I got into that space of flow, and it did make it easy. I also had time to listen, and grow as a listener and get turned on to new music. I got healthy, right? I wasn't on the road so much. I was walking all over town, and
Mhm.
like all of us, worried. But parts of the pandemic, were beneficial, and just kind of having time to discover who you are at that time, and silence is sometimes great.
Yeah. Yeah. And all that, imagine there are bits and pieces of that time and that worry, but also that growth as an artist throughout this album. He gave you his blessing and he gave you his music sheets and he encouraged this project. When he passed on February 9th in 2021, did his passing make you consider your legacy as a jazz musician at all? Did it change your perspective as an artist in any way and how you approach projects or life in that sense?
Yeah, because you assess that person's life. And for me, I was like, well, it wasn't so much I wanted to continue his legacy so much as continue the way he looked at music, and how it was so much a part of his life. And it made me want to become a better composer. It made me really want to do. So I went back and sort of looked at some of the arrangements I had done before he passed, and really wanted to make sure they were spot on as best as I could. Um, when an iconic person like that passes away, it's a way to kind of access what you're doing, assess what you're doing and what you've done and what you can do in the future.
Mm-hmm. Are you happy with your career? Do you look at that with pride as you should? Or do you?
I've really only begun to look back, just recently. I don't really look back. I don't even like listen to my records after they're done much. You know, I I look forward, and I'm still practicing every day and uh hoping that I grow and change, like all my heroes did, like
Mm,
Miles, Herbie, and Chick, and they all changed, and I want to keep growing and doing that. But yes, I'm happy. I'm so happy to be able to be traveling and playing for people live. I mean, that's a real blessing. It's a real privilege, actually, not only to play with other musicians and vibe with them, but to vibe with audiences. You know, at the same time, you're vibing with musicians.
yeah.
There's nothing that beats that, man.
Have you considered? I just thought of this as you're talking that you are at that caliber. You're up there with the greats, and that these musicians that play in the orchestra or that you meet along the road or out there, that they look at you probably in awe as you did with Chick Corea and his albums and so many other artists that you admired, that you have that spot now, that you're there. um, you sound like a person that also listens to the musicians as Chick did for you, to listened and encouraged you. Is that?
Yeah, that's sort of the next step for me is to really play with younger musicians and pass the baton, if you will,
Mhm.
pass my knowledge. I don't think of myself on that level. Um, I'm too hard on myself for that, I think. And
What do you have to
never
achieve to
assume
feel like you're there? I mean,
that
you've
I'm
achieved.
on any kind of level like that. It's nice to hear you say that. I appreciate that, but um, that's just my own thing.
Okay, we're gonna go to break now with No Mystery. It's off the Returning to Forever album. John Beasley is my special guest today. Would you like to say anything about or comment on this song, John, as we go to break? Anything that we should listen for, or?
Well, I used to play with Stanley Clark. I have a tenure with him in the 80s, and I think maybe 2018, 2017 I started playing with him again. Maybe even before that. And we used to play this tune No Mystery on the set. So I had to learn it, and it's hard. And I remember sort of scuffling at first with it and him kind of chuckling a little bit, you know. And then of course having all these conversations about Chick. Um, and so yeah, this is special for that reason.
Okay, enjoy No Mystery. John Beasley's my guest. His album is Returning to Forever with the Frankfurt Radio Big Band. It's the music of Chick Corea's return to forever, reimagined, and it honors the legacy of the great man, Chick Corea. Go to johnbeasleymusic.com and pick up your copy.